And we are back. You are chatting with John P. Today we are going to be talking about 5 alternatives to the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. But first, I'd like to thank you for tuning in and also liking and subscribing. It does help me. And also, don't forget to check out delraywatch.com, where we have some of these watches that are on the list, as well as many, many other watches for you to check out. And find me on Instagram, The Real John P. Wristwatch check before we jump right into the topic is the PAM 98, so the Panerai radio mirror alarm. And wow, this thing is awesome. It's 42 millimeters, but I have a 6.5 inch wrist and it fits perfectly. We actually have this at delraywatch.com, and I believe we are the best price in the world. So if you're in the market for one of these awesome alarm Panerais, pretty rare watch these days, check it out. Once again, delraywatch.com. Now moving into the topic at hand, the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. Now, this is a watch that was released, the original, in the Basel 1972 fair, the Basel Fair 1972 in Switzerland, of course. And so when AP, I'll use AP instead of Audemars Piguet because it's a bit of a mouthful, when they launched this line, or this model at that point, people didn't really know what to say. They weren't too sure about it. It wasn't in demand at first. It was new. People were wearing circular watches, or sometimes square. These alternative polygon watches were just not in demand, as any company or anybody developing creative things in the modern world, they sometimes take a bit of time to catch on, and that's what happened here. But throughout the history of watches since 1972, you have many other manufacturers, both high-end, mid-tier, and even micro-brand and lower brands and higher brands, any brands, they've developed alternatives. And so the first one is the Girard-Perregaux Laureato. Now, the Laureato came out just a few years after the original AP Royal Oak was released, and wow, it's the shape and the exact shape of the GP Laureato has stood the test of time, even up until recently, the last year and a half, 2 years ago, when they re-released in the original form and design the Laureato, even up to the waffle dial, which, if you're not familiar, it's basically the dial has an imprint or a texture rather of a waffle, and the GP Laureato is almost untouched currently from what it was originally, and that's what makes this particular example incredible. I mean, a brand that can, well, of course AP is doing that, but another brand that is putting in-house manufacture movements in basically everything they release currently, and still generating this or creating the sports watch that came out originally competing with the Royal Oak. And on top of that, GP has been around for 230 years. I think that's incredibly impressive, and there's some great value there. These start out at like $3,000, not for the current gen, a couple of gens ago, and all the way up until 12 grand plus, depending on if there's precious metals. So if you're in the market for an AP and you can't find the one that you want, or maybe you want something even more approachable with an in-house movement, you cannot go wrong with Girard-Perregaux Laureato. So next, the Piaget Polo S, and full disclosure, we do have this available at delraywatch.com. Now, this one looks a little bit more like a Nautilus, but it still kind of has that, the overall shape and feel. You can see the picture here, so certainly you can see the styling cues. Now, the thing with Piaget is they really are an incredibly high-end manufacturer. They make their own movements. Their finishing is excellent. The way that they mix brushing with polish is something manufacturers like Patek have really mastered. But moving into a lesser known brand like Piaget, who's typically known currently for their crazy, I don't want to say application pieces because that's what Patek calls them, but they're pieces that are diamond studded and jewels and all of that. It's really amazing to see them come out with a sports watch that competes somewhat with the AP Royal Oak. So if you like the look of this, it's a little bit different than the Royal Oak, and certainly the price is around $6,000, so it's much less than the AP Royal Oak, which, their models 30 years ago, you can buy today for $8,000, going up until, hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on if it's one of their research pieces or something like that. So it's more affordable, but the quality is certainly there. Moving on to one that is considered affordable, it's a Baume Mercier Riviera. Now, these can be had from anywhere between $500 to $2,000, depending on which one it is, what it comes on, the styles, is it a chronograph, all that, all that stuff. And here's the thing, for that kind of, Genta-inspired Royal Oak design at $1,000 or under, or in that range, it's kind of a no-brainer if you like the Royal Oak and you're in that budget, whether it's something like a gift, whether it's a first watch, or maybe it's just the range that you're in, no judging there. It's a great watch overall. It comes from Baume Mercier, which is a respected, watch producer, and they make a lot of watches, and they make great watches. So you can't go wrong there, and it certainly can take a bunch or two here with some of the others on the list. We actually had one available, and I liked it. It was comfortable. It had an Edda movement, and it was so it's reliable, and the quality was pretty good. So you can't go wrong there. Moving on to I would say one of the models that they're coming out with so many versions of the dial, so many limited editions. It's really amazing. The IWC Ingenieur. Now, in the Ingenieur line, they have so many versions of this currently. They even have an Ingenieur that looks a lot like an Oyster Perpetual, the new Oyster Perpetual from Rolex. So they have gone into a little bit more of a typical or traditional watch shape, but they still do have the IWC Ingenieur that looks a lot like the AP Royal Oak. So you see a picture here, and there's many other versions, and there's many other sizes, and even some of the older ones, they're around 38 millimeters, they go up to 42, and you can get an Ingenieur in maybe a smaller size for starting at $3,000 if you really hunt for it. And of course, sky's the limit along with some of the other watches or models of watches. But IWC, they've been doing this a very long time. They had, with this model, the Ingenieur line rather, they had the first bidirectional rotor with the Peloton system. So it winds both ways the rotor travels, and this creates a lot more precision and accuracy, supposedly because it winds better and this and that. That can be disputed, but nonetheless, you see the watch here, IWC, high quality IWC Schaffhausen. Moving on to the next one. Now, probably the highest quality one on the list, we have the Vacheron Constantin Overseas. Now, the Overseas really was hitting the market a couple of decades ago, and they really started styling their watches after almost directly the AP Royal Oak and some of the others in the line. But in current days, current generations, they have kind of moved away from that, and they have developed a little bit of their own case profiles. You can see in the pictures here, they really have done, I'm going to try to put actually a picture here of one of the older examples and also one of the current examples, so you can kind of see the trajectory that Vacheron went with. Now here's the thing, Vacheron's Holy Trinity, so they're up there with Patek, they're up there with AP, and of course Vacheron is the remaining for the Holy Trinity of high-end watch manufacturers, and the quality is high. It's going to be up there with some of the others, and if you're really, you're really picky with this stuff, maybe you can see some differences up against something like a Patek Nautilus, but which is not on the list. But when you're comparing the minutiae here, you can get a Vacheron Overseas, depending on which model, it's starting at like $5,000, and so when you compare this to, $15,000 AP, $25,000 now, I believe. It's almost a no-brainer, right? So if you're not willing to spend it on the AP for the current gen, or if you can't get one, or the sizes and the things that you want, because by the way, the AP is almost following the same trajectory as Patek is doing. So if you can't get it, or you don't want to, or it's not for you, these are all great alternatives, including the Vacheron, which we just spoke about. So I want to know, what do you hear about this, guys? Is really AP the Royal Oak and everyone else is copying it? What do you think about that? I personally think that creativity is based off of other things that you experience. So unless they're directly ripping it off, I don't see a problem with it. Do you see a problem with it? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, did I leave any of these watches out? Did I leave anything out? I don't think that I did. Of course, there's going to be some micro brands that do this. Speaking of micro brands, leave that in the comments as well. I'm curious what micro brands really rock out with the AP Royal Oak design, or somewhat around that design. So let me know below. Also, check out delraywatch.com. Do not forget to please hit the like button, because it does help us here, this little community in the comments we've developed. And also subscribe, that stuff, delraywatch.com, Instagram, The Real John P, all that stuff. Thanks for watching, guys. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.